Tonight, I am going to continue teaching from Preparing to Die, starting on page 117, which is section 5, What to Do for Yourself After You Die. Now, last week, I went over Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche's teaching about this period, and I'm going to go over it briefly now, according to Andrew Holecek. So at the moment of death, when the body dies, you have this experience of the mother luminosity, ultimate reality, and so forth. And most people pass out experiencing it because it's so intense. And I would say that most people watching this video are in that category. When you regain consciousness, then you are in the bardo of Dharmata, which are the Pure Lands, the deities that we practice, and the mandala of 100 peaceful and wrathful deities is associated with this. And it is that mandala that I'm using at the beginning of all these videos when I post them on my YouTube channel. And this is on the cover of Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche's book, The Bardo, the Interval of Possibility. Now, Holecek says that if you don't recognize any of this, you enter the bardo of becoming. And Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche approaches this slightly differently, and that is that you enter the bardo of Dharmata, where you have all these different deities appearing. At this point, I say I'm going with Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche's explanation. But there is a quote here by Trangu Rinpoche, which I think is very important. And it is, to the degree that you can control your mind now, you will be able to control it in the bardo. And to the same degree, you will be better able to withstand the onslaught of your own thoughts. And that's an important point, because now, as your consciousness is not directly tied to a physical body, it's your own mind that you're dealing with. Your experience comes from your mind. The deities come from your mind. And if our minds are full of fear, confusion, totally wild, then the bardos turn into a nightmare. In the bardo of becoming, this is where we take on a new life or a new form. Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche described the bardo of becoming like this. He said that you are in a battle and you're on a horse and you get thrown from the horse. Then there you are with this battle going on around you. Everybody is mounted on horses. You jump on the first riderless horse that comes by. So he is describing this experience as being like full of fear and anxiety, and that you just, without thinking, in a state of panic, find, if you're going to be born, a human, a womb entrance, and enter that. So to back up a little bit here, the next part of this chapter is the first step. And what's the most important thing at this point is to Recognize that you are dead, that you are actually in the bardo. And this needs preparation. There are different things that can be done to prepare for this, but it needs preparation because most people are not aware that they are in the bardo until sometime after they died. So we need to have awareness. We need to prepare. We need to have prepared our awareness or stable. The example of a dream is used here. So the final stages of falling asleep are similar to the experience of dying. And if you can train in being aware as you fall asleep, this would be beneficial as you are dying. Then the other is, he uses the term deep dreamless sleep. And I have in my notes a big question mark next to that, because what I'm familiar with is lucid dreaming. And this means that you become aware of the dream. You become aware that you are dreaming. And as a result of that, you realize that this is coming from your own mind, and you develop the ability to control the dream, to actually change the dream. This is very helpful when you're in the bardo of dharmata, when it's combined with recognition that you are in the bardo, because then you have the ability to control where your mind is going in a bardo. He also talks about witnessing dreams. And this is when you wake up in your dream, you watch, but you don't, you might say, engage in them. It's a bit more like watching a TV show. So you have both this idea of lucid dreaming, where you can control the dream, or witnessing the dream, where you don't control it, but you realize it's just a dream and no big deal. The next point is, we need to recognize which bardo we are in if we're going to use the proper remedy. So this goes back to going over chapter 1, section 1, which is what to do for yourself before you die. And I'm not going to review that. Spent plenty of time on that. So it's helpful to read that to, again, remind us of what we need to practice. And then it's good to have others read the Tibetan Book of the Dead, which helps us recognize that we are dead, and it helps remind us of what to do. He used the metaphor of recognition creates a hitching post to kind of keep us from getting too wild and panicky and so forth, because of all the experiences that we're experiencing, that we don't get swept away. The next point is, one is to recognize that you're in one of these three bardos, and which one. The next is awareness itself, and he calls that a formless reference point. This allows us to, again, observe the mind rather than being swept away by it. And that we can just, if we want to, watch, or if we want to, take control and direct the actions. And this section ends with, if you can recognize that you're in the bardos, that recognition liberates. The next section is called After Remembering. The one I just talked about was the first step. So now, after remembering, it's important not to be distracted from that recognition. Or if you're doing any form of meditation, to not be distracted from it. In these bardos, this is, you might say, the dividing line between where Buddhas and sentient beings are separated. And it can happen in an instant. Again, the choice is enlightenment or continue in samsara in your next life. Then comes a long quote by Trangu Rinpoche, and I think it's worth reading in its entirety. I'm not sure what page it's on, but it's in this section. The quote is, "The basic preparation for this bardo consists of cultivating now, while you are still alive, the ability to rest your mind at will, and within that state of tranquil mind, the ability to make choices mindfully. This needs to be cultivated during one's life, and if cultivated, will be of great benefit during the bardo of becoming." Next, he talks about the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and that it is meant to be read continuously for 49 days. So it's to remind the person that has died to be mindful in this period of time. Now, in the bardo packet that was prepared under the guidance of Khenpo Karta Rinpoche, there is a recording of a reading of the Tibetan Book of the Dead. So if you have that, it would be excellent to leave instructions behind to have this played as you are dying and after you die. Now, there are signs to look for after you have died to verify that you are dead. And they're very simple. You will cast no shadow. If you look into a mirror, you will see no reflection. You can walk on snow or soft earth and will not leave footprints. Your body won't make any sound. People won't respond to you if you talk to them or try to talk to them. You can move through solid walls, no problem. And you can fly, read minds, and so forth. Also, it said that you cannot see the sun or the moon. So all of these things, any of these things, if you experience them, is an indication that you are no longer alive. It is said that when you realize this, it can be quite shocking, and you might feel a lot of pain. Again, this is a very good reason to prepare for these experiences now while you are alive. If we develop positive habitual patterns, they will kick in the bardo. If we don't have positive habitual patterns, they can't kick in the bardo, and we'll just have a wild mind. The phrase usually is blown about by the winds of karma. You also in the bardo will encounter other beings that have similar karma. This is an important thing. A little bit later, we're going to talk about how helping them, having compassion and so forth is important. And you'll benefit from it, and the person that you help will benefit from it. So after you realize you're dead, then if you practice dream yoga, you'll recognize whatever appears as just your own mind, like in a dream. If you practice generation stage, like in Chenrezig, Amitabha, White Tara, Medicine Buddha, we do all of these. Generation stage is all the chanting you do up through the mantra repetition. So if you've done any of those, this will help you transform bardo of becoming, because you can use these visualizations and so forth, the mantras. And then you could also direct your mind towards a pure land. And this really is the level that most of us are on. In the Bardo packet, there is a chapter that is included in it from Karma Chagme's Mountain Dharma that is about choosing a pure land. And that would be a very excellent chapter to read if you don't have the Bardo packet. I think it's in volume 4 of the 4-volume set of Mountain Dharma. And of course, it's taught by Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche. And Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche says, choosing a pure land of Amitabha is the one that you want, Dewa Chen. It's the easiest one to be born into. And once you're born there, you cannot slide back, and you will quickly receive teachings and attain enlightenment. And at that point, you can go to any pure land you want, or you can come back to samsara and lead others out. Then he talks about some advice that Tulku Tondra Rinpoche gives. And it is that right now is a very important opportunity. Don't waste a moment. It is our greatest opportunity to advance. And he says, remember to feel happy when you're in the bardo, to have a sense of peace and joy. And then he says, there are things that we can do in the bardo that will be very beneficial. First of all, perceive everything in the bardo as sacred. Again, this can come from practicing generation stages, where we develop this visualization of Chenrezig or of Amitabha, White Tara, Medicine Buddha, and so forth. See everything in the bardo as sacred. It's called sacred outlook. Realize that it's all the play of your mind. And then cultivate devotion to the Buddhas and your guru. It could be Karmapa, Galwan Karmapa. It would be fine to cultivate devotion to Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche. A third bit of advice in this section is don't grasp or struggle. Become one with whatever arises, and then relax into the innate purity and goodness of whatever you're experiencing. So that was under the section of perceive everything in the bardo as sacred. The next point is have a calm and stable mind. If possible, have spiritual support of a teacher, of a positive experience, and so forth. And keep resting your mind on this support without distraction. Secondly, rely on the confidence that you have developed Doubt and hesitation are big problems. I remember Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche saying one time that doubt will not help you in your spiritual endeavors, and it won't help you in your worldly endeavors either. So if you have doubt and hesitation, that can be a big problem. So it's good to develop confidence in your positive self-image. I talked about this Sunday. In fact, I feel compassion for other beings that you might meet in the bardo. And he says, recite mantras and prayers if you can remember them. And he said, one single positive thought, like thinking of Buddha Amitabha and Dewa Chen, can actually lead to being reborn in that pure land. The third point is equanimity. So to go back and summarize again, the first point is perceive everything in the bardo as sacred. Calm and stabilize your mind is a second one. The third one is equanimity. Having an open, positive, stable, and peaceful mind. See everything as illusory. Pray to Karmapa, Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche, Trangu Rinpoche, any of these great teachers that you have a relationship with, whether they are living or are nirvana. And avoid negative states of mind. So to kind of sum up this, that by practicing now, we are developing habit. We're developing the power of good karma, merit, and that what is important in life is accumulating merit, and everything else that we accumulate will be left behind, except maybe our negative karma. But certainly our possessions, they will all be left behind. So there's really no point in holding on to those. And finally, just rely on the good habits that you have developed. Here is another quote by Tulku Tondrup Rinpoche. Our bodiless mind lives on with its past habits and floats rapidly without break at high speed towards its future destiny. So now here are other practices. And right at the top of the list is Chenrezi's mantra, Om Mani Padme Hung. This blocks doors to the 6 realms of samsara, keeps us from being reborn in any of the 6 realms of samsara. So it's excellent to repeat that mantra and repeat it a lot, both when you're alive and, of course, when you are in the bardo. The next mantra is Amitabha's mantra, Om Ami Dewa Re. And this opens the door to be reborn in Dewa Chen. So that is a very important mantra too. Now, the next point that is brought up here in terms of other practices is keep your eyes looking up. Now, when you're in the bardo, you're going to have a illusory body that looks like, at first, the body that you had before you died. And then as you approach the bardo of becoming, your body becomes a new one that you will be born in. So you're going to have eyes. If you look up, this will lean you towards being born in a higher realm. And if there is a POA at the time of death, if you are looking up, this will help the POA be successful. If you look down, this takes you towards the lower realms. And if you look straight ahead, this will tend to lead to rebirth in the human realm. Very simply, take control over what's happening by taking control of your own mind. Contemplate while we are alive how what we do now determines what realm we are born into, and even who our parents are, and how close a connection we have to the Dharma in our next life. This contemplation will really help, you might say, motivate us to practice more, read more, study more, and develop more positive habits, more beneficial habits when we're in the bardo. The next point is, quote, if everything fails, cry out to your teacher. So there's a quote here by Choki Nima. I have no power to choose, so please bestow your blessings that I may be born in a situation where I can connect with the teachings, receive the oral instructions, and quickly progress along the paths and stages towards enlightenment. Please make sure that I am not born as an ordinary person. Without access to the teachings, let me attain a precious human body. Now, you don't have to memorize this and say this in the bardo, but if you can say something like that, that would be excellent.